Welcome back, everyone. I hope you managed to grab a quick cup of coffee. Welcome to the session. We are talking about vocational routes into finance and accounting, specifically T-levels. So this should be a really interesting session. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so please do post your questions as you go through. I'm sure you've got used to doing that by now. I'm going to hand straight over to Gemma from ACCA and let Gemma lead you through the session.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi everyone, welcome to today's presentation on the new accounting T-level. I'm Gemma Baker, Partnership Engagement Manager at ACCA, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. Today you're going to hear from Suzanne Hall from our partners Pearson about how T-levels work and what they are. She'll also cover details around the content development for the accounting T-level and how Pearson and ACCA have worked together with employers to make sure that the content is relevant to and required by the modern workplace. I'll talk you through ACCA's involvement and the support we're offering our networks and partners. We'll then hear from Sam Riley from Bridgewater and Taunton College, a Wave 1 T-levels adopter, who will talk about the work placement, what the commitment is from employers, and how it has benefited their students and employer networks. And finally, as Sarah mentioned, there'll be some Q&A at the end, so please feel free to post questions in the box as we go through. And if not answered during the presentation, we'll pick up at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Susan Hall from Pearson.
Thanks, Gemma. Afternoon, everybody. As Gemma said, my name is Suzanne Hall, and I'm Head of Product at Pearson, sitting in the BTEC and apprenticeship team. So it's my team that deal with the T-level strategy, but also the development of the qualification, the specification, and the assessments. So I thought I'd kick off this afternoon by just introducing what T-levels are, and to give you a little bit of a background with regards to the rollout of them. So these are post-16 technical study programs, and they're going to sit alongside apprenticeships and A-levels for full-time students in a 2-year study program. So that may be in an FE college, or it might be in a school or a sixth form. They've been developed in partnership with the government, so the Department of Education lead on this, and the contracts are managed by the Institute for Apprenticeships in Technical Education, or IFATE for short, as you can see there on the slides. And in total, there are 15 industry routes, and 11 of these routes are going to have a T-level, and therefore there will be 25 technical qualifications in total. So they're quite specific around industry routes. They are about the technical skills required for those routes. And as such, the outline content is based on the apprenticeship standards. So there's an awful lot of synergy between what happened in the apprenticeship and the content that sits in the T-level. But I think one of the key things to mention there is that if you're an apprentice, when you complete your apprenticeship, you would be deemed occupationally competent. For a T-level student, because they are spending 80% of their study within a classroom, they are deemed threshold competent. So slight difference there in terms of the level of competence that they would have when they complete their qualification. So these are really about getting that foothold into technical employment and very specific occupational roles and starting their career progression. Lorna, can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. The DfE are rolling out T-levels over a gradual period of time. So the 2020 pathways launched for First Teach September 2020, and we saw 3 T-levels launch in that year. So construction, design, surveying and planning, which Pearson hold the contract for. Also the digital production, design and development, again, which Pearson hold the contract for. And then also in 2020, we saw the launch of the education and childcare T-level, which NCFE have. You can see there on the rollout that different qualifications are being rolled through in different years. And eventually, by the time we get to the full set of routes in 2023, this is where we will have those 25 unique technical qualifications. It's probably also worth mentioning that whilst the DfE are rolling out the actual physical T-levels, they're also being rolled out to providers or colleges at the same time. So not everybody has access to the T-level programme right now. So again, this is a gradual rollout of colleges across England with regards to their uptake on a T-level. So just to give you a little bit of information with regards to how T-levels work, they're based on a number of components. So Lorna, if you could move to the next slide for me. Thank you. So there's 3 components here. So there's this big thing called the technical qualification, and you'll have heard me just talk about those just now. So these are these 25 technical qualifications that sit within the T-levels, and accounting, of course, is one of those. In addition to the technical qualification, the student must also undertake a substantial work placement. So this is a minimum of 315 hours, which equates to about 45 days in industry. And it needs to be specific to the technical qualification the student's doing. So obviously for accounting T-level students, we would expect to see their placement taking place within an accounting firm or within the function of accounting, finance, within a wider business remit. There are also elements of transferable work skills. So here we're looking at generic work skills such as employability skills, motivation, leadership, teamwork, communication, etc. So that is much broader, but again, they are the types of transferable skills which again we see really important for 16 to 18-year-olds being able to grasp in order to get that experience to progress into full-time employment. I'm just going to hand back over to Gemma, and she will talk a little bit more about ACCA's purpose.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I'd like to share a bit more about ACCA, why we've chosen to be involved in the T-level project, and what benefits and next steps are for students and employers. So starting with a bit about us, ACCA is the world's leading professional accountancy body with a global network of 769,000 members and students. As such, we have a responsibility to be a force for public good. We lead the accountancy profession by creating opportunity so that anyone wanting to become an accountant or to invest in accountancy skills can do so. We're very passionate about opening up the profession and creating accessible routes to the ACCA qualification. T-levels are a cross-parliamentary initiative to provide different career pathways to young adults, particularly for those focusing on a career post-A-level. Therefore, supporting the development of the accounting T-level is very much in alignment with our core principles. We decided to partner with Pearson in the content creation for this qualification and also to support our college and employer networks, helping them to prepare for delivery in September this year. It's vital that we support our small to medium-sized employer network and larger regional employers with access to local talent. Our experience is that graduates can prefer to work for bigger known brands and often want to live and find employment in bigger cities. That can leave employers in urbanised zones and rural locations with the issue of graduates unwilling to live locally and smaller employers trying to recruit from a dispersed school leaver population, which can be a difficult community to access. With the support from ACCA and the local T-level colleges, employers will be in touch with a continual pipeline of talent to access and support their businesses. The accounting T-level has been created with employability in mind, and we've worked with a team of employers to shape the content to be relevant and robust. After completing the accounting T-level, students will be able to continue their studies into ACCA, fulfilling the minimum entry requirements to start our qualification. The work experience component of the T-level creates a smooth transition from education into work. It can also be organised to count towards the professional experience requirement of ACCA and put them well on the way to membership. Next slide, and back over to Suzanne.
Thanks, Gemma. So as Gemma said, we at Pearson have collaborated with ACCA and also a wider band of employers with regards to the creation of the content and the assessment for the T-level. Now, this is mandated by government, so it's something that we have to do as part of the qualification development. It's also something we have to do throughout the duration of the contract delivery. So it's not just about creating the specification, it's also about creating the assessment year on year, and it's also about validating the assessment outcomes after each exam series. So employers are really fundamental to the development and delivery of T-levels for all AOs that are involved in them. We have something that we call an EVP, so an employer validation panel. And ACCA have been, instrumental in helping Pearson pull that panel together. They're on it themselves, but also it's opened out to their wider members. And we have got a range of employers across the whole of England that cover SMEs, regional, local, global companies as well, finance companies, accounting companies, but then also cross-sector companies as well that have that functional role within them. So it's not just about looking at a purely accounting company, it's looking about the functionality of accounting across other businesses too. Those employers help us with the elaboration of the outline content and the sample assessment materials that we submit to Ofqual and the Institute for Apprenticeships, which become then the approved technical qualification. And then each time we create assessment materials, we seek employer validation on the scenarios and the contexts of those assessment materials. So we want to make sure that the employer set projects and the occupational projects that students do as part of their assessment actually are true to life, they're fit for purpose, they're relevant for industry, and that they're accessible from an entry-level point of view from that student going into their first job. And as I also said, we also seek employer validation on what is on the screen here called approved grade standard exemplification materials. So basically that's a very long word for the outcomes of the live assessments. So we're looking to make sure that what students actually generate in their live assessment, again, is fit for purpose and valid within the context of the particular specialism of accounting. In addition to employers, we also work with providers, so colleges, sixth forms, schools, etc. So we want to make sure that from a teaching practitioner point of view, that what we develop is accessible and it's manageable for them to deliver. So again, we have an employer panel as well, and I know there is a link for providers and for employers to get involved with this. So on our website, you will find an employer validation panel page. And also if you want to sign up to becoming part of that panel and getting involved with T-levels, again, you can go through to that page and register your interest, and somebody within our partnerships team obviously will then engage with you to actually pick that information up and liaise with you of how you could get involved. Lorna, can I have the next slide, please? And I will just move on to talk a little bit about the accounting T-level itself. So this is the structure of it. And you can see it's quite hefty in terms of its guided learning hours. So in total, we're looking at 1,100 guided learning hours, or GLH. It's split into two components. So there is the core component and the occupational specialist component. And the core component is then split down into 3 different assessments. And these assessments assess the knowledge and skills that are fundamental across accounting, finance, and legal, because accounting sits in a broader T-level route of legal, finance, and accounting. There are 2 exam papers, both of equal duration, 2 hours, 30 minutes, and they're both 90 marks, and they are both 2.5 hours in duration. So again, they're pretty substantial exam papers, and they would probably look quite similar to what you would expect to see out of an A-level paper. That's probably the easiest way to describe what those look like, with a mixture of short questions, medium questions, calculation questions, and also longer extended open response questions. In addition to the 2 exam papers, there is an employer set project. It's not actually set by employers, it's set by the exam board, but it's validated by employers, but it's referred to as an employer set project. And this is where we ask employers to get involved with the context of that assessment and validate it for us. And again, make sure it's fit for purpose. The project for accounting is 12.5 hours, and that's sat over a 4-week period. So we set that window, and students are assessed on the project. The project is made up of a variety of different tasks, and they are undertaken in exam conditions over that 4-week window. So the whole of the core component is made up of those 3 assessments, and then all of those assessments, the marks are aggregated and outcomes a mark of A* to E. So the student would get an overall grade of A* to E for the core component. For the occupational specialism, The specialism title for accounting is actually assistant accountant. And the project again is substantial. So this is now a synoptic project. It's not modular, it's one big project right at the end of all of their learning. And their learning for this is 600 guided learning hours. So if you want to equate that to maybe an A-level is around about 350 guided learning hours. So you're looking at almost 2 A-level sizes worth of content here. The project is, as I said, almost 17 and a half hours. It's 17 hours and 25 minutes. And again, it's set in a window. So very similar to the employer set project. It's made up of a number of tasks. And those tasks are all set by Pearson. They're marked by Pearson. So there's no internal marking here from centres. There's no moderation happening. And in total, the project is worth 258 marks. So again, it's really substantial from the size of it. The projects are graded pass, merit and distinction. And the grading sits at the pass is where the threshold competence sits. So if you compare the pass mark to an A-level, it's actually almost the equivalent of a C. So again, the outcomes with regards to this are high. They are very sort of, compared to A-level, they are certainly equivalent. But when we're looking for threshold competence, it is about that minimum standard that student needs to enter that particular job. Lorna, could I have the next slide? And I'll just talk a little bit about the industry placement. So I've mentioned this already, a minimum of 315 hours. And as I said, it is within that particular industry sector. And it's designed to build that threshold competence. So they've got an idea of what it's like to start full-time employment within that chosen sector. Throughout the duration of their T-level, the student can work with a maximum of 2 employers. And there is some dispensation for SEND learners, and they can also have a 25 hours worth of tasters. So again, some occupational specialisms have got a variety of different sectors within them. So they can have a taste to see what it is like. But for accounting, actually, they've only just got the one option. The DFE website obviously has lots more information about the industry placement, and it's not actually managed by Pearson or any of the other exam boards. The DFE placement is managed by the Department for Education, but of course it's a fundamental part of the success of the T-level, because if the student is not actually, applying what is taught in the classroom into the industry placement and vice versa, the outcomes are not going to be as good for the students. So the industry placement is really fundamental of the success of the T-level. And as Gemma was saying, if we're thinking about this and building pipelines for industry, certainly what we're seeing from students that are already involved in this with the T-levels that are live right now, they're looking at getting that really good placements and industry understanding what the benefit of a T-level learner can be from their local area coming into work for them. And I'm going to hand over to Sam now, and I know he's going to talk a lot more about industry placement and how that has been happening at Bridgewater and Taunton. Sam.
Thank you, Suzanne. And afternoon, everybody. My name is Sam Riley. I'm the Assistant Principal for A-Levels Arts and Professional Studies at Bridgewater and Taunton College. And as Suzanne and Gemma have already introduced really today, my role is to just provide a brief overview of our experience to date in T-Levels, and to provide an insight into some of the real positives that we've had, and some of the wider considerations really for students and employers potentially considering this route in the future. So as previously mentioned really today, the concept of these waves, so we are a wave 1 provider of T-level. So we were in the first cohort of colleges to trial T-levels, and in 2020, as Suzanne demonstrated on her slides, there was access to early years, digital and construction pathways. And we took the decision to move and do all 3 of those pathways in 2020. Starting this year, we also added a health pathway to our T-level provision. And whilst accounting specifically is brought in and can start from September 22, in terms of our own roadmap and where we are on our journey within professional qualifications, we're looking to start the business T-level in September 22 and the accounting T-level in September 2023. We've currently got 100 students that are studying across the different disciplines at the moment, and they've all secured placements with local employers across Somerset and across the southwest of England. And I think what we found really exciting, and one of the things I was concerned about when we started this project, was how employers would view T-levels and would they fit for everybody. And what we found is that we've got a good range of students working in small and medium-sized enterprises, right the way through to the largest employer in Somerset in terms of the Somerset NHS Foundation Trust. So I think providing there's a really good strategic relationship in place between the FE college and the organisation, then these T-levels can certainly work. I think the only thing I would also add to this slide is this is a school leaver qualification. So as Suzanne said, it is a post-16 qualification. So generally the students that would be enrolling onto T-levels are high-performing academic students from school. So students that are coming out with equivalent grades to progress onto A-levels. The alternative that you may find is that a student decides to do a level 2 qualification at a college for a year, which is also known as a transition to T-level program. And that is a 1-year intensive course about developing the students, identifying the gaps in their knowledge, in particular because of the pandemic, and then making sure that they are ready for a level 3 program the following year. So it's likely that the students you have on placement will be 16 and 17. There are a few dispensations. If a student has an educational health care plan, they could be 19 plus, but generally speaking, 99% of your students that potentially move into this will be 16 or 17. Thank you very much. So we've spoken a little bit about T-levels and what they do. What I wanted to just touch base on really was from a practice, from a college perspective, what we are finding the rationale behind T-levels. Fundamentally, are raising the profile of technical-based education. There has been this concept and divide between some people that this BTEC is a vocation and an A-level is an academic route, when actually, both vocational and A-level routes are both academic. You just need a different skill set. What a T-level does is really grassroots the theory and technical competencies and the academic qualities of a student, but just contextualizes it into a more meaningful work placement. A 315-hour work placement is considerable. It's a day a week, or it could be a block placement release throughout a year. But actually, this is different to a BTEC. This is not a transactional relationship where a college may come to a company and say, oh, can you take Sam on work placement for a week? That is not what this is. This is really about building a pipeline of future talent and understanding how we can work collaboratively with employers to achieve that. But likewise for students, what's been great and has really started to help is they can start to appreciate the academic challenges that they're facing in the classroom and how that actually correlates to work readiness and work practice. And I think what the T-levels have started to do, and this will continue to happen over the future years, is build more routes than just the traditional. So, we have volumes of students that will leave college or their sixth forms or their school at 18 with a level 3 qualification, and they may go into the workplace, or they decide to go on to an undergraduate degree route, and then they'll go through that process and they'll leave at level 6. Now, for some degree routes, they will go straight into employment. For other degree routes, we know that there are a number of students that are unable to access jobs in specific degree areas. And a lot of that comes down to actually their technical work experience. What a T level does is open the door to higher education. It's not a blocker to that. Students may still progress onto a degree, but actually it really does present opportunities to get into higher and technical level 4, level 5 study. And I think the ACCA apprenticeships at level 4 and level 7 would be a good example of that. You know, you may find that you take a student on, you've taken Gemma and Suzanne into a business and they've done amazingly well. And actually you want to hold on to them and put them through their apprenticeship with your company. That's great for the company. It's great for the organization, keeps talent in the local area, but it's great for Suzanne and Gemma. They've not got to go away, pay a full cost degree program, and actually they're in a job earning a salary. What the T levels also do, create a real clear strategy moving forward between routes between an A level, a T level, and an apprenticeship. BTEC qualifications are still available, but they will start to reduce over the coming years as these T levels start to take priorities in these sectors. And really for those businesses and companies out there from a more strategic point of view, if you compare us to Europe and some of our G7 counterparts, we're making variable progress in terms of our ability to deliver technical education, in particular at that level 4 and 5. Lots of Europe and G7, they'll have a lot more people skilled at level 4 and level 5 to do those technical, skillful jobs, where we have this kind of hierarchical approach at the moment with significant amount of leavers at level 3, significant amount of leavers at level 6, but we're not necessarily catering for that level 4 and level 5 demand. And the T level does tap into that. And then could I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So just as a case study example here, this would be for health. So in this instance, I've put the transition program on here as well, a step before a T level. But essentially under that level 3, you'll see on this slide in the middle, it says health, nursing T level. So as an example here, we have taken on 25 students this year doing their health T level in nursing. They've all got their placement at our NHS Foundation Trust, placed across Somerset, working in various wards, whether it be adult nursing, mental health nursing. They will do their 2-year program. And then from that, have the opportunity, they'll skip that jump of access to nursing. That would be the kind of adult route into nursing. But then they would then skip that opportunity and either be able to progress onto a nursing associate higher apprenticeship, which is a level 5, but for the purpose of this is almost the level 4 ACCA option. Or they could have the opportunity to go on to a registered nurse degree apprenticeship, which would be a level 6. Or they might take that opportunity to go, do you know what? I think for me, the best option is still an undergraduate degree, a traditional degree route. And they'll have those opportunities to do that. And under the University Centre Somerset, we have that direct route. So we offer nursing degrees, nursing apprenticeships. So for us, when I'm talking to these students coming in at 16, kind of saying that you're basically on a 5-year trajectory to becoming a fully registered nurse, but actually you're going to do that working collaboratively with the employers. And there's good opportunities for you to earn a living whilst you do that. So we're already finding now that there are some real shining stars in that cohort, and the trust is saying to me, Sam, we need to hold 4 spaces for our registered nurse degree apprenticeship for these students, because absolutely we want to keep them in Somerset. We want them to be part of our future. We see them being, you know, futures and leaders and managers within our organisation. So already we're seeing some great benefits to that. And similarly, we're seeing the same in digital and construction. But that was just a brief example really of how that trajectory can work. And our experience so far, really, from a student perspective, what does it feel like to be a T-level student in some of these first cohorts? Our student surveys say that students are having a great time. Satisfaction levels are really high. Good balance between being in college and being in the workplace. And I think for a 16-year-old who's coming straight out of school at the moment with missed learning, significant gaps potentially in learning, lacking some social skills sometimes in places because of the challenges over the last couple of years, this does provide quite a nice balance of making sure that they've got the academic side behind them, they've got a good pastoral and tutorial program behind them, and they can start to dip their toe into that meaningful work experience. What has been a real driver for us, and something that we've done very well as a college over the past few years, but it's really enhanced our strategic relationship management. And I think anybody considering this in the future, this is really important. The best placements are placements who are saying to us and working collaboratively that they're driving this as part of their workforce. So they're planning for September 23, September 24, we are going to have 3 T-level students. They are going to be part of our workforce. This is what their job description is going to look like. These are the kind of roles and responsibilities we want them to be able to start to complete and achieve. They have a mentor in that workplace. It's really effective. It's like you would have your own inductee into how you would induct any other member of staff. And that effective planning is already leading to a conveyor belt of talent. I thought it was nice that Suzanne mentioned the softer skills earlier on in terms of what the T-level is set out to do. We are seeing that significant development. And sometimes that softer skills, we kind of go, oh yes, communication, but actually we're really seeing developments in students being effective. And actually something I've really noticed is students being more community minded. So understanding the corporate responsibility of employers, actually how they can influence the community, what do their values and culture mean? And they're really bringing that back into themselves and how they act as professionals. Some of the challenges I would just note as well, the national awareness of T-levels really been interrupted by COVID-19. So lots of work is continuing to happen with schools and employers, but it's something that we need to work on together. You know, there's a lot of work for schools at the moment, and how high is this on their agenda in terms of making sure students have good opportunities to progress into T-levels? There is a substantial difference between a T-level and a BTEC. And I think that the minority of employers where we've had a few initial snags is because they've not fully understood that difference, and that actually, you know, you are giving up and placing a lot of your time into a T-level student, whereas, you know, that BTEC is a little bit more transactional if they're coming out into work placement. The end result being, however, that at the end of a T-level, as Suzanne said, these are occupationally threshold ready. They are ready for the world of work, which you could argue with a BTEC that they might not necessarily be at that point at the end of their program. So that's it from me. Thanks for listening, and I'll pass back to Gemma.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, so as we've heard today, T-levels will give a new and accessible route into the accountancy profession. And with the apprenticeship agenda embedded, there's a natural progression route into ACCA. It will give a strong foundation for those wanting to move into accounting, business or entrepreneurial roles. A huge benefit to students is being a step ahead, as we've mentioned, in employability with the 315 hours of work experience required. As Suzanne mentioned, the work placement is assessed as part of the qualification, and this can go towards the practical experience requirement for ACCA. So there's also a great benefit to employers who want to tap into that talent pipeline earlier and work closely with this audience to see who might be a good fit for the company. Next slide. As mentioned earlier, the accounting T-level fulfills the minimum entry requirement to start the ACCA qualification. Our qualification covers a breadth of knowledge from a foundation of both management and financial accounting. Students can then progress through and take options at the final level where they can specialise in an area that will support their future career choice. Professional skills are built into the qualification, and we work with our vast global network to spot trends as they happen and build this into the syllabus to make sure that our qualification is relevant and forward thinking, including topical areas such as sustainability and digital content. There are options to study ACCA via an apprenticeship too, and we also have flexible options beyond ACCA if students wish to continue their studies further. Our partnerships with the Oxford Brookes and University of London means that there are degree and master's programmes available too, with just a few units to complete to gain an extra qualification. In summary, the T-levels qualification is an excellent opportunity for students who have a career in accounting in mind to gain a strong foundation in accountancy whilst working and gaining work experience. Students will be able to take those skills forward and become a fully qualified accountant, and also open up new employment opportunities via the work placement. Employers will get benefits from the T-levels by developing their recruitment pipeline earlier, getting access to talent through the work placement scheme, and links to local schools and colleges. So with that, I think all that's left is to say thank you to Sam and Suzanne, and hand over to Q&A.
Thanks, Gemma, and Suzanne and Sam as well. That's really comprehensive session with loads of points. We've had some questions, which is great. And there's a couple of practical ones on here, so I'll throw those out first. The first one is, who actually finds a placement? This might be a question for you, Sam, or possibly Suzanne, but is the onus on the FE college to find the placements for the students, or is this done differently?
Yeah, so as an FE college, we would support the students in finding those placements. Effectively, if a college is looking to run a T-level program, then they should have done the groundwork to already have those employer links ready, because ultimately, for the student to complete their program, they need to have those placement opportunities. What we try to do really is build the opportunities for the students, but the students are the ones that are making that initial contact. So we do try to do it in a way that to provide the platform for those learners, but actually they are talking to employers to identify what the best fit is for them. We do that in a number of ways. We've invited employers into the college to do a kind of round robin exercise. We've done online activities with to host employers so that they can talk about opportunities for students. Students have then gone, actually, yeah, I like employer A, or employer C sounds really exciting. But yes, in a nutshell, the FE college would be responsible for helping and sourcing those placements. Okay,
wonderful, thank you. The other sort of practical question here, I guess, is, and I think I know the answer to this one, but is the expectation that the employer has a job for the T-level student at the end of the programme? And also, not linked to that, but separately, who pays for the T-level? That might be a Suzanne question, I'm not sure.
I'm happy to take it from a college perspective, first of all, if you want, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Go on, Sam, go
on. Is that coming from an employer or a student, Sarah? Or
hard to tell, not sure.
Okay.
Probably an employer.
Okay, so there are no specific, so unlike an apprenticeship where there is a specific salary that's had to be paid to a T-level student, there is no specific obligation to pay a salary or a wage to a T-level student. Now, some organizations do. That's their prerogative that they will do that. Some offer kind of support bursaries in terms of travel expenses. They might support them with additional kit that they need to carry out that placement, but there's no specific obligation for the organization to pay a student for a T-level placement. In terms of a job at the end of it, I think that comes back to that strategic importance of thinking about, as an organization or as an employer, why would you want to take on a T-level student? Because ideally, yes, ideally that we would want them to be able to have opportunities to go move into a junior position and build their way up the organization. Great thing about that with young people is that you can mold them, you know, and you can mold their values, which is fantastic. But also it could be that route into those higher apprenticeship routes that they may continue with whilst they're with you. So again, not essential, you don't have to have it, but in terms of building the buy-in from the student and the employer, it is worthwhile in terms of considering that pipeline of future talent.
As we, I guess a lot can happen between bringing the person on board and the two-year program, and one might be there at the end of it. But I guess, why would you, as an employer, go through that process if you weren't thinking about it from a pipeline point of view, as you said? Suzanne, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, there's nothing I wanted to add. I mean, certainly employers that we're working with in the development do see this as a real good benefit towards their own pipeline, as you just said, Sarah. So, you know, not that they're necessarily thinking of, you know, retaining that T-level student, or they're mandated to retain that T-level student. As Sam said, it's not essential. But I think they certainly think that way, you know, and it's that sort of benefit of being able to sort of, you know, engage a student into their business very early on, and then see if they fit. But of course, you know, it's not an essential requirement, because obviously, you know, we want T-level students to keep progressing through these, and there's only a finite number of jobs at the end of the day, whereas placements, obviously, for a T-level student, as Sam said, if you look at the trajectory of a T-level student, they may go into employment or they may go on to further study in various different formats. So, you know, remaining in that industry or in that particular job role isn't obviously going to be essential.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And just a quick one, there are a couple more, but I think this is a quick answer. Are you finding, Suzanne, that this is mainly big corporates that are looking at T-levels, or is this working better on a smaller local scale, or is it a combination?
I think, I mean, obviously we've got, you know, a small number of centres delivering T-levels right now across the UK. And in all honesty, it's probably smaller companies that are more interested in it than the bigger, larger ones. We have, from our own employer panels, we have a mix. We have, as I said, we have global companies sitting on those employer panels, national, regional, and then small SMEs, you know, very small companies, one-man bands, etc. So it's a real mix, which is great, because it needs to be, because the needs for all of those employers, of course, are slightly different. Yeah. And I think, you know, certainly from a local perspective, it's really important that local employers actually do get involved in this, and they don't just see it as something that, you know, perhaps a national company would do and support, but in actual fact that they are sort of working with their local colleges to engage in this type of activity and make sure that students have got the best access they possibly can have with regards to industry placement and, you know, and progression after they've completed their T-level. So we're getting a real mix. But I think from a college perspective, it's certainly much more localized as opposed to a national company.
Okay, thank you. There was another point, which is slightly different, which you touched on the issue about some universities not recognising T-levels. And I guess this is more of a statement than a question, but, you know, if that doesn't change, then clearly there are going to be some issues down the line for students and for employers. So any further thoughts on how that might change, or if it will?
All AOs are working with the Department of Education at the moment with university groups. So university groups are split into different categories of university group, and we're working across all of them and with UCAS. You know, T-levels get UCAS points. Every qualification gets UCAS points. Doesn't necessarily mean you can get to that university to do that degree with those UCAS points. It's, you know, it's still a selective system applying to university. And, you know, some universities, even if you had 3 A levels in a certain subject, if you haven't got the right grades or if you haven't got the right combination of subjects, you can't go to that university to do that degree program. So I think you've got to look at it with a much broader eye, as opposed to just going, some universities at the minute don't accept T-levels. They do accept them if they are relevant for the degree program. And I think that's the key thing. So, you know, as Sam was sort of saying, particularly with regards to health, there's real clear synergy with regards to the degree programs that those T-levels actually naturally progress into. And we see that even with the construction. You know, we're seeing civil engineering to go on to university to do civil engineering. That's the logical progression. But, you know, we have a occupational specialism within our construction qualification about hazardous materials. You wouldn't do that and then progress to civil engineering. So again, it's making sure that you've selected the right T-level program to actually apply to the right degree program. The work going on with universities at the minute is actually to raise their awareness. We tend to find when any new type of qualification is launched, universities actually want to see how it performs. Because they want to know that the output of that student, and they're going to be prepared for the next step as they go on to progress onto university. So there's again a slight mismatch, I suppose, with regards to the completion of T-level students and progressing into universities, because we don't know how they perform in terms of preparing a student onto a degree program, and that's possibly where universities are nervous. So that's the work that's happening right now, so they understand the content, they understand the specification and the depth and breadth that students cover on the content, but they also understand the assessment as well, because the assessment, you know, as you've seen, is very I'm going to say it's quite academic. It doesn't look, feel like a normal BTEC assessment or another, you know, vocational qualification sitting at level 3. It's set and marked by the board. So it has much more of a feel of a general qualification sitting around it. And that's the work that's all happening with universities at the moment, and trying to address their concerns. So some people may have sort of seen in the education press, particularly maybe with construction, the maths content. So the maths content is sitting there and it's the appropriate content at level 3, but it's how universities are viewing that. So it's being able to actually pull that content out so they can see that it's there, and therefore students are prepared when they progress.
Okay, that's a really helpful answer. Thank you so much, Sam. You were nodding away through quite a lot of that, so I'm guessing you agree.
I do, absolutely. And interestingly, students that we've had apply for university on their T-level program, where there's been a question, the university have not just provided a flat refusal to the student. They've come back to the college just to find out a little bit more. I think Suzanne's right, it's a new qualification. Yeah. Like the schools have lacked a little bit of understanding about the progression routes for their students. Ultimately, I think universities are in the same boat. But actually, I think there is a willingness on their side to understand T-levels. I don't see it being an issue long term. And in actual fact, as T-levels progress and more students go on to T-levels, the volume of applicants that would be able to go on to university would shrink if they didn't accept them. So I think it's almost self-perpetuating that it will be fine. Like anything that's in its infancy, the universities just want to take their time to consider what's best for them.
Perfect, thank you. I'm really conscious of time. There was one more question about how employers can support placements. I'm guessing hopefully can pick that up offline. It's a really important one. Thank you to all of you for the session. So really comprehensive, really great overview. I'm sure our audience have got a huge amount from that. So a big thank you. We've got time for a quick break now, and then we're moving on to a session which is on about supporting mental health and well-being, which we've sort of slightly touched on in amongst all of that conversation. So really important final session of the day. So thank you everyone. Thank you for the questions and for being here, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.